This is Carrigan and Company. You know, folks, I've known the College Hype team for more than 20 years. They're a local screen print and embroidery company servicing the New England area and beyond. Now, what makes the team so special is that they have more than 35 years of experience and they do all the work in-house. I love their tagline, making a difference one t-shirt at a time. Speaking from experience, I know that is the truth. Learn more at collegehype.com. Hey everybody, it's me, Kim, and today we're going to help you stay motivated with lots of tips on health and wellness. This is Carrigan and Company.
Carrigan and Company is here for you. Yes, Carrigan and Company is here for you.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Carrigan and Company. So good to have you with us today, and boy, do we have a great show for you. So here we are the third week in January, and I was just reading a survey that was actually taken a year ago, third week in January, that said that half of the people who had New Year's resolutions to be more fit and to live a life of wellness in the new year had already given up. So I don't know if you're one of those people, but you certainly are not alone if, in fact, that's the case. But I am convinced that New Year's resolutions don't have to be about January. They're about the whole year. So we're looking for some ways that we can motivate you to get back on track for those New Year's resolutions that you made 3 weeks ago and maybe you'd like to see linger throughout 2025. So here keeping me company is someone who knows a whole lot about that. And I'm so thrilled that he is here. And in fact, he's a return guest. So I very much appreciate that. Conor Murphy is with us. He is a fitness expert. He's a trainer, and it's great to have you here.
It's very nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me back.
I bet you that's not a shock what I just said to you, is it?
Which part of it? With the statistics?
Yeah.
It's not.
I know.
Do you want to dive right into why?
Well, okay, before we do that, I just, for people who maybe didn't get to see you on the first show, let's tell everybody why fitness is such an important part of your life. How'd you get started with it?
Absolutely. If I go all the way back, my parents were really into fitness,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit different than what I'm doing now, but they were bodybuilders. So when I was born, they were both actually competing in bodybuilding.
Yep.
And then so my dad ended up managing a Stay Fit in Spokane, Washington. And so fitness is always a big part of their lives. My mother was a collegiate gymnast. My dad played sports in college as well. But the biggest piece is that if we wanted to get better at the athletics that you were in as a kid, then you needed to train outside of just going to practice.
Sure.
So that was really instilled in me at a very, very young age. And then enlisting in the military, the same thing is that you had to be fit to go through training. And then outside of the military, it was just a better quality of life by being in the constant pursuit of fitness than really training for any specific goal. You know, training for goals is really good, but if you have this thought process of I'm going to be a better person, I'm going to be a better dad, I'm going to be a better brother, I'm going to be a better boyfriend, I'm going to be better at this, if I'm in the constant pursuit of improving the quality of my life through fitness. So that, I mean, from my parents early on, and then getting out of the military, that's when I started coaching and training others. That's when I started trying to compete in CrossFit. And from there, it was it led to a journey where now I have toured and trained all around the world some magnificent and amazing people, from, you know, your everyday athletes, from someone who's 80 years old to, you know, world famous comedians and rock stars all the way across the world. So I'm super fortunate.
So I love what you said, and that's the constant pursuit of fitness. It's a lifestyle, essentially, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, obviously, you learned that from your parents. That was a lifestyle that they led. And I think a lot of people who are in that constant pursuit probably did have that kind of influence in their life. But that doesn't mean that you can't change that and you can't be someone who's in a pursuit of fitness.
Right. And it looks different for different people
Sure,
as well.
absolutely.
Sometimes people think, or they see, that person, that Conor guy, he's crazy, so I can't be like that. So sometimes it's just, well, let's just wipe the board clean then, rather than saying, hey, here's maybe a couple of habits that can improve my quality of life through fitness that I can maintain and hang on to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so much about the maintain and hang on to, which brings us back to how we started this show. And the idea that, you know, I think everybody and not everyone, but a lot of people go into the new year with the concept of, okay, restart, new year, new me, right? And fitness is a big part of it. And even if it's not fitness, it's just overall wellness. They just want to live a healthier lifestyle. And then third week, it's tough. And by the way, I don't know about you, Conor, but I think January is a terrible month to start that. It's cold. You can't get outdoors very much, to maybe walk or just be more active. It's dark when you get up, and it's dark before you get home from work. So it's the first thing a lot of people do? They go home and eat, some kind of comfort food. You know, I mean, it's a tough month to get started.
I think so, but I think if it really comes down to it, every month is going to have its own struggles. Because now, imagine,
Conor,
all right,
don't say that. I'm trying
July.
to make this better for people.
Let's start this in July. Well, what's the first thing that happens? The 4th of July. Right. Now you're going to maintain, and it's like January at least has. I mean, every month has it, but I think you're obviously on the right path of pushing people to how can we maintain this? And I think it's just setting realistic goals and realistic expectations of what can I do and what am I willing to do to make these changes in my life. I think that's the biggest piece about how people can maintain is setting yourself up for success to begin with.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that somebody who probably has not exercised for, let's say, 5 years, and right now we're talking specifically about exercise, and they decide, January 1st, I'm going to start every day, I'm going to run 2.5 miles. That's just kind of crazy talk, isn't it?
Yes. Now, I will not take that away from some people because there are people that get to a point in their lives where they think, I'm done with the excuses. I am done with my previous lifestyle and all of the things that I was doing that got me to where I am now. There are people that have that mental switch. One of them is in this building right now. Smitty back there. Mm-hmm. He is down 67 pounds since deciding he doesn't want to live that lifestyle anymore. So now with him, all of these extreme changes that he made, he was willing to do it. He was willing to change everything about it and not sink back into the comfort of it. Sure. So I don't want to always take that off the table, but for most people, most of the time in most circumstances, it is those small changes that is going to eventually start to move the needle in the right direction.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, so with the idea that the backdrop of this show is we want to keep you motivated, we want to say it's okay if you fell off the wagon, and I don't mean necessarily the alcohol wagon, I'm talking about just the exercise wellness wagon, but you can still do this. So now I come into you. I've decided, okay, well, I couldn't do it on my own first 3 weeks, so now I'm going to go and I'm going to see Conor, and hopefully he can help put me on the right track. Where do we start? What do we do? And let's say I'm somebody who has not done anything for 5 to 8 years because I had a baby and I got a career and I got a crazy life. So now here I am and I got to get back on track.
I think the first thing that needs to be established is what are your goals? What would you like to see from this? Mm-hmm. And I think for the most part, people have this general understanding of, well, I'd like to be healthier. You can point out some things on a graph where, my cholesterol is a little bit high, my blood pressure's high, my resting heart rate is a little bit high. I'd like to get those better. But what do we often hear is people say, well, I'd like to lose weight.
Right.
Because excess body fat has its own issues from a medical standpoint. But I think where I like to start with people is to think, what would you like to get better at? And then find some objective goals on how to get them there. And I don't like the objective goal to always be, hey, I want to lose weight, because there are relatively unhealthy ways that we can do that, or just ways that aren't optimal to someone's fitness.
Right.
So maybe I would ask you, what would you like to do? Are there any physical things that you'd like to get done? Mm-hmm. And maybe your answer is, well, I don't exercise, but once a week I walk. And I'd like to be able to walk a mile without having to stop or rest. Awesome, we have a starting point there. Yep. Well, how far can you walk now? Let's try it out. Let's see where you are, and let's create a training program where in 4 weeks, if we reach that goal of you being able to walk a mile in 12 minutes, maybe you didn't lose 20 pounds, and that's that motivating factor. But gosh, now we have some objective data where you are now able to achieve something you weren't able to before. Well, great. How many times can you sit down on your couch and stand up without using your arms in 1 minute? You say, well, I've never done that. I always use my hands for the armchair. Well, let's see if we can train that. Let's see if we can train a functional movement like the squat through a pain-free range of motion. And there are some amazing things in that. But if you just keep it at that surface level of, let's say you were able to do it 10 times in the first week. And then we have some homework when you're coming in with me to train. We're doing some things to improve that. And then in 1 month, now you can do it 25 times in 1 minute. Well, gosh, you are now a more capable human in the sense of sitting down and standing back up. So finding those little things, and really these functional movements, the things that our bodies were meant to do and that we need to do, they are very, very important, and they do transfer to a whole lot of other things. So it's not like, all right, Connor, here's the 1 million things I need to get better at because I'm not good at it. Let's find a couple of things and let's get some easy wins.
Yep.
Where let's say you miss a couple of days, or you fall off the wagon and you eat your the meals you weren't going to, or you're going to drink, or whatever that case may be. Well, you can get back to, all right, well, how many squats was I at? Let me try to fight to get this through there. And then we can just kind of keep those wins in there. That's what I like to do as a trainer, rather than some of the other stuff that's a little bit harder to tell if we are continuously getting these wins. If all of a sudden we didn't lose 4 pounds last week, but we're also lifting, we're getting stronger now, we're more capable. And that's usually where I would start someone at, depending on what their goals are. And also, what are you willing to sacrifice to get there?
Right. I know that I'm going to state the obvious, but people no doubt react positively to reaching goals. So if you keep those goals, I guess, as you've said, reasonable, they're willing to make the sacrifice to go to the next level, right?
Yes. And even milestones are good with that too. Because I think sometimes if a goal is set too easy, for instance, if we were going to say, hey, I'm going to go dry January. Okay, well, that's the goal, but it's finite. But what happens January 31st? What happens February 1st? If February 1st, you're like, nailed it, here we go, you achieved this goal, now you go back to drinking just as much, if not more than before. Was that really a goal that you should have been aiming for? Or was it something that can be a milestone? And now it's, okay, I'm going to give myself 1 night a week to consume alcohol. And again, it just depends on if the consumption of alcohol is retracting from your goals or not. Is that something that we need to start to mediate or have these, have these conversations about?
Conor Murphy is my guest, and he is a fitness expert. Conor, what do you say to the people, though, who believe, oh gosh, I didn't meet that milestone this week, and so I'm done?
That's hard, and I think that I could probably learn from having a conversation with someone like that more than the mentality that's instilled in me. I think it's easy as a trainer to say, hey, here's what your motivation should be and push someone through that. But I think simply having the conversation with someone, I'd be able to learn kind of a little bit more behind the why or behind the, hey, I want to sink back into this level because it was my comfort zone. I don't know if I could have a set answer of saying, well, here's what you got to do in order to be more motivated. Maybe just asking that secondary question. If you were to come in and say, hey, it's 3 weeks, I didn't hit my goals that I wanted to, I'm done. And it's like, well, what was the process? What did we go through? What was so uncomfortable about this that you weren't able to go through it? Maybe we try a different approach. But I think that I'm done kind of thing. It's like, well, you're done chasing your goals, or maybe you're done with this direction that you were going to get those goals.
Right, sure.
I wish I had a finite answer that's just like, this is what you do. And then everyone was like, yay. But if I had that, then there'd be much less me's out there trying to, improve the quality of people's lives through fitness.
I would assume, though, that what you do say to a lot of those people is, okay, so we had a tough week, right? I mean, I think people just get so down. I think people expect a lot of themselves when they set these kinds of goals and they set out to do it. And my personal experience, which is I come from a family of, my father's exactly the same person, that you just talked about with yours, and I've spent a lifetime doing all those kinds of things. I was never an athlete, but certainly somebody who's always been interested in fitness. And I think someone really early on said to me, it's a lifestyle. It's not a, we're not in this. It's not a sprint. It's over a long period of time. And I think people don't buy into that, and they should, right?
One of my mentors, and he was quoted saying, fitness is a low trajectory to a distant horizon. And I think that when we set ourselves up for these goals that maybe are unachievable or are sacrificing pieces of our life that we're not willing to sacrifice, that's what sets us up for failure. And there's these, there's all these acronyms like SMART goals, where it's specific, measurable, attainable. There's all these different things about what kind of goals should you set. But I think those smaller pieces of, this is what I want overall, and here are the steps I'm going to take to get there.
Yep.
And then realizing if you do fall off for whatever reason, or if you do have that extra meal, well, what was it about this that got you to that point? And then what can we do in order to move forward? But I think the same thing as well is it's this instant gratification. There's this social media like, you do this for 21 days, this is the results you're going to get. Everyone needs to sell something that is profound and that is,
right.
It's like it's got to be brash. It's not like, hey, here are some ways to do this. You see, like, this is the way to do this. And if you're not doing this, and it's like, oh, I'm not willing to do that.
Right.
And I think the expectations and goals of just being a little bit more realistic and smart about what we're looking to do and realizing that there's many ways to skin a cat in a proverbial sense, obviously.
Well, we're going to continue to talk about this. And before this show is over, I'm going to have Conor talk about just some things maybe he might suggest to those who are listening to get you back on track, just a couple of basic things that you could do at home. And then later, Conor and I he's going to show me a few of these moves. We'll put them up on social media so that you can see them. I will be watching Conor do them.
We will both be doing them. Stay tuned.
But in the meantime, I'm very excited. You had suggested our next guest, who is a doctor who puts together sort of a concierge program for you individuals for fitness. I think he sits down with them just like you just sat with me, and you start talking about their lifestyle and what they need in their life, and he can lay out a fabulous over a lifetime program for people and fitness. So let's talk about that. And maybe he'll have some suggestions for people at home and what they can do to get started on this fitness journey. You are listening to Carrigan and Company. Stay with us, everybody. We'll take a quick break and we'll continue the conversation on the other side. You know, folks, I've known the College Hype team for more than 20 years. They're a local screen print and embroidery company servicing the New England area and beyond. Now, what makes the team so special is that they have more than 35 years of experience and they do all the work in-house. I love their tagline, making a difference one t-shirt at a time. Speaking from experience, I know that is the truth. Learn more at collegehype.com. This segment of Carrigan and Company is brought to you by Lucia Lighting and Design, where people in the know go for the best possible lighting and design experience. Welcome back, everybody, to Carrigan and Company. Great to have you with us today. Our theme today is to motivate you, our listeners and our watchers. If you maybe set some goals for yourself the first of the year and it's the third week in January and you're having some trouble staying with those, I've got some guests here who can help motivate you to get you back on track. Of course, keeping me company today, Conor Murphy. He is a fitness expert and a trainer and had some great things to say as we got started. So thank you very much. Really terrific. And we'll continue our conversation. But you had suggested our next guest, who is Dr. Richard Joseph. And Dr. Joseph, it's great to see you. And Conor, it's very funny because during the break you were just saying, Dr. Joseph is somebody who did what all trainers want to do. Tell us what you said.
Well, from a perspective of becoming a doctor, I mean, that's kind of that next level in it. But where Rich and I's paths crossed is from that passion for training. But as Rich has in his practice now at that level of a doctor, can actually prescribe the types of things that a simple trainer wishes that they could.
Sure.
So not only from the medical side of things, which is a completely holistic way of viewing someone's health, he actually has the ability to pass off people to trainers rather than just say, hey, here's the medication, so on and so forth. So it's just a complete way of viewing health. And so I'm super fortunate to even be associated with Rich, and we're looking forward
goes both ways, buddy.
Well, Doctor, so you started in the world of fitness first before you
it's a
got that.
Very similar story to both of you. Raised by a single mom who also loved fitness, and no matter what day, she was going to bring me and my sister to the YMCA, and we were going to sit there and watch her while she got her hour in. And so I think it goes back to the same story. From a young age, that value is sort of built in, and I'm really grateful to her that she exposed me to that, and it's continued to this day.
Sure. So then you decided, well, I'm going to add to that, and I'm going to go to med school.
Yeah. So I started out in the strength and conditioning world for a while, and loved training people and trained individuals and trained some athletes before I went to med school. I always had it in sort of my mind that that's where I wanted to go, but knew that movement was probably the most potent therapy or medicine out there, really. I still believe that, and I think a lot of the science would back that up, and was very frustrated that world of health and fitness was not connected to delivery of traditional medical care. And so went to med school really with that idea in mind of wanting to bridge the gap there and figure out how to build a care model that brought the two together in a thoughtful way.
Sure. I think it was about a year ago that the AMA came out with a study that proves that exercise extends your life expectancy. So clearly both of you believe that is the case. Do you have any general, sort of guidelines that you go by, that you talk to your patients or you talk to the people that you train about how much it can help individuals?
I'll let you finish that first.
Well, I'll start, and I think you would agree with this, that I think if you have a body, you're an athlete. And I think it's important to think of yourself.
Oh, I like that. If you have a body, you're an athlete.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people look at us and say, oh, you just work with athletes, or I'm not an athlete. It's just, and I think that if you have a body, you're an athlete, and therefore you have to train in different ways, right? Sort of let your body do all that it's capable of. And it's true that with time, and sort of entropy and wear and tear that occurs with life and with aging, right? We've just become less resilient over time. And so a lot of the work that we have to do, I think, as individuals to stay robust and vital requires sort of building that adaptive capacity over time to sort of manage the stress of life. And
Sure.
I think that's where a lot of, fitness comes in. That's what it's about, right? And sort of building those systems.
And I think where really the passion for me came in was outside of exactly what Rich is saying. It's like, if you've trained with me before, I refer to you as an athlete, because it is movement and there are goals that we want to get fitter. Our goal with any and every athlete is to develop and get as much work capacity across every modality of training, whether that be running long or short, whether that be lifting from a deadlift, a squat, or a press, and everything that's in between there, gymnastics, monostructural, and weightlifting. And if we can continue to combine those, you can create the best athlete possible. Maybe it's not a sport that you're playing.
Sure.
But my dad, for instance, he is 65 now. And when we started training together, he got to a point where he could overhead squat 185 pounds. And this was 20 years ago, which is pretty incredible. That's holding a weight over your head and squatting through a full range of motion. My dad can't overhead squat 185 pounds anymore, but you know what he can do is he can do 115 pounds for about 10 reps. And the big piece of that, he has enough of a work capacity where he's never going to be fitter than he's ever been anymore. But he's holding on to this capacity where I'm not worried about my dad's ability to stand up or sit down on the couch or getting stuck if he falls down to the ground.
Sure.
He has developed this amount of capacity, and now his goal with training is to hang on to that for dear life, because the definition of health should speak to quality of life. You can be absence of disease and you can be in a coma, right? That doesn't speak to your work capacity. But what you are capable of speaks to longevity and quality of your life throughout your years.
Doctor, when you sit down with some of your patients and you begin to put together a plan that you hope is going to take effect today and last until the last day that they live, actually, I feel confident that's the kind of plan you're putting together. Let's talk about what I know we talk about fitness, but talk about the nutritional side of that and how much you approach that and how important that is for overall wellness.
Yeah, so the way that I practice is really to look at the whole picture, look very holistically with people. And I think, for me, it is a very fitness-forward practice. That's my background. I also look at movement as a nice metaphor for life in many ways, right? You have to train in different ways. There are different modalities to training. Usually, if you over-index in one, it comes to the expense of others. And I think, to be balanced in your fitness, I think also applies to being balanced in your life, sort of outside of the gym. That said, it's like people have a lot of different things that they want to work on, right? And so while everyone's training, everyone has different other pieces that they want to work on, whether it's sleep, whether it's their nutrition, whether it's they need, obviously the medical care piece of things, right? It's a whole approach. And so, nutrition's tough. It's a big black box for people, and it's not just about nutrition science and of sort of like what's the quality of food you're eating and what do those things do to your body. It's also the behavior of eating. Like so much of eating is behavioral as well. And, I see it in my practice with people who are, very successful, right? Professionally, they have a lot going on, and people still struggle, right? Like
Right.
everyone has their struggles, and food is often one of them for people, especially if they have high stress in their life, and and so what are they using the food for, right? And I think that's so there's the behavioral side as well as the sort of tactics around what you're eating, and so I focus a lot on that. I pair it with their training. I talk a lot about protein intake. I talk a lot about their hydration. I talk, all these pieces. But if people end up saying, hey, like this is something I really need to focus on, a lot of my job is to find best-in-class specialists and practitioners like Conor and sports nutritionists, et cetera, for those people that take a deep dive with my clients. And I think, all of us would love to have, building a team around people. That's really what my job
absolutely.
is. Absolutely.
I think a lot of people who are listening are thinking, well, that's only for people who are wealthy.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily true, right? I mean,
no, it's not. I think it's a challenge. I mean, I will say that my practice exists outside of the traditional system. I think that, that's sort of how I've had to build it in order to practice the way that I want to practice in a way that feels authentic to the type of care that I want to deliver. That said, I think there's so many resources now for people to figure out a way to construct sort of a personalized plan for them around their health. I think the challenge is how you navigate through all the information that's out there right now. It is complicated. And even for someone like myself who considers myself pretty well versed in a lot of this stuff, it's figuring out what's signal, what's noise, right? I think that's a lot of the value that I try to bring to people is helping them sift through all the noise. That said, I think that, we've overcomplicated a lot of health in the world that we live in now. We live in a sort of an economy, especially that's really wired towards helping people be more convenient and comfortable, to your point earlier, and that's sort of antithetical to a lot of the way we need to approach our health, I think. And so I think one big question that people can ask themselves, just in terms of their health, but also their self-development, is how can I be more uncomfortable these days? How can I put myself more purposefully into discomfort, right? So that I can keep growing in ways that are adaptive to me. And I think if people approach their life that way, it will help them from a health standpoint.
Absolutely.
Honestly.
So Conor kind of touched on it, earlier, talking about just the social media, and there's all of that out there that makes people feel like they have to be involved in when I look at a lot of it, I think to myself that would last me about 15 minutes, and then I would never do that again, because it's kind of silly.
Yeah.
And I feel confident the person who's showing me that did not get that way doing what you're advising me to do. Having said that, trying to get everywhere so quick, I want to ask both of you about weight loss drugs and how you feel about that, because obviously everyone is talking about that, and a lot of people are using them in ways that seem very positive, and others I'm a little suspect. So what's your feeling about that?
Oh man, we could have a whole show about this if you want. So this is an area that's I have a lot of experience in. When after residency, I practiced in the weight management center at the Brigham for a number of years, and this was before semaglutide and tirzepatide came on the market. This is when we were sort of using the earlier versions of GLP therapy.
So for people who don't know, we're talking about using the terms they know. It's the Wegovy's of the world,
the Ozempics of the world, and those are sort of the most current iterations of these meds. But honestly, they've actually been around for 20 years now. These types of therapies called incretin-based therapies, and I think, like all medicines, right, there are pros and cons, and talking to each person about the pros and cons, and they can be wonderful for the right people and not great for other people. And I think it's really understanding, in a lot of my work, is understanding people's unique physiology, but also their psychology and their priorities, right? And I think, I think that they've been amazing for certain people who really need them and can be life-changing. And then I've also seen them cause harm for people. And obviously there's been it's basically a whole industry that's been spawned off of these therapies, right?
Absolutely.
And whenever you have the potential for commercial gain, I think you have to be wary. I think health and sort of economic incentives don't mix very well all the time, right? And I think we see that when anything has it's one package or one plan or one protocol, right? It's usually can't be very personalized.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, just going on that, there's a lot of resources that people can, simpletons like myself and books to read on that stuff to give me a better understanding, because my thoughts have changed on that, especially over the last year when just educating myself a little bit more. Sure, would I love for people to say, hey, I am morbidly obese, I am at 40% body fat, things are not going well for me, I want to come in, I want to change my lifestyles, I want to train, I want to come with you and do it the right way. Optimal, for sure. But what I don't see and understand, and what Rich was saying, is the psychological part of it, is that some people are less healthy as being obese than they would be with using these drugs.
Yep.
That may be the thing that actually gives them more health than if they are refusing to change what we say as lifestyle factors with nutrition and with training. Again, I have people that I've worked with that have done both of those things, but I don't want to demonize it for someone who may potentially need it, and it can improve their quality of life, along with some of the other stuff that Rich can tell them to do along the way. And that's something that's changed with me, and more of an empathetic way of understanding what different people need.
Yeah, and so just to play doctor a little bit here, is so when we talk about obesity, I think it's important to say people have obesity, and they're not are obese, right? Because I think the more and more we understand obesity, it is a disease in the sense that there is pathophysiological processes in the body that are going on, right, that are not normal. There is both sort of the metabolic consequences of that, as well as the psychosocial consequences of that for people. And so I think it's really important to think about the language we use around obesity. And then when we talk about these therapies, I think it's important to understand that people have obesity for a lot of different reasons, right? It can be, people can be on medications for a long time and become obese, have obesity because of that, right? And so it's often multifactorial. And I think it's hard, for those of us who, I love training, you love training, right? We want everyone to sort of have as much self-efficacy as possible, right? To take control of their training and their nutrition, et cetera, but it doesn't work for everyone. Right. And so I think, building the optimally healthy body, I look at as a very complicated process. For each individual, very complicated. And so I'm all about using all the right tools, all the available tools that we have, right? And not being too dogmatic about one approach. I think that's dangerous.
Doctor, you have no social media.
I don't.
It's a mental health thing for you, along with maybe it's just a
I think that I appreciate you calling that out. My wife is like, you should get on social media. More people would know about your practice. I think attention really matters. I am someone who really values the quality of my attention, and I think all of us should. When I talk about performance in the context of my practice, it's your ability to bring attention and energy to what matters most to you in your life. And our attention is under complete assault these days. I feel it all the time. And so part of it is my own resistance, right? And making sure I reclaim my attention as much as possible. I also think that I think I have some important things that could be helpful for people sometimes. I think that, the 99% of my life feels like total chaos most of the time. It's not glamorous and glorious, right? I have 3 little kids who just had norovirus last week, and all of them threw up on me over the course of 24 hours. And sometimes I wish there was someone taking a picture during that time,
right? Absolutely.
Because that's the real stuff.
Real life.
And I sort of wish, I could be a bit for me, just being authentic is important. I think it's hard to capture that in social media. But I hope that if I have things that are useful to say, they can get onto other important platforms like yours and yours. And it can,
just let the other people do the work for you.
It can be recognized that way, yeah.
So listen, we could sit here and talk. I could talk with you all day long. But as we run out of time here, I want to just ask you, for those who are listening, because again, what we're trying to do here is motivate people. What's the one little tidbit you could give them right now to say, get back on board? What is their advice?
Yeah, I think to your point around, I know we're talking about resolutions here, but I think resolutions has a a bit of a negative sort of self-flagellating connotation to it a little bit. I've been bad and therefore I have to resolve to do something different versus, intentions is another, throw that out there as another option to think about of, trying to get better or trying to, do this rather than get rid of that, if that makes sense. Sure. And I think to your point earlier, every day that we wake up is a new opportunity.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I fall off the horse every day in some capacity of something I'm trying to do or be better at, and have to take the time every morning the next day to resolve again, right, and intend to be better. And it's great that our calendar year has a few of these times, baked in, like January 1st or your birthday or whatever, to really, do this. But I would just recommend and really urge people to spend more time reflecting and sort of intending day to day rather than waiting for a new year to do it.
Absolutely. There's always Monday.
Yeah, there's always
all good diets. There's always all good diets start on Monday.
There's always
That's right.
Every moment.
That's right. Exactly. It's never too late.
No, it's never too late. And I think
never too late to make a difference.
Yeah, you just keep working on it. And I think health is just a great way to think about self-development more broadly, right? Because I'm a big believer, and I know we talked about ways to get people to be healthier and what they could do, but I think it's important to recognize that to be optimally healthy in the world that we live in is to be countercultural in some ways.
Yes.
And is not easy.
No.
And even for the clients who I work with who do have plenty of resources and things like that, it is hard.
Yeah.
And so I think we have some solidarity in that together.
You bet.
Yeah.
Dr. Joseph, last thing here.
Yeah.
Tell everybody how I realize that you're not on social media, but your practice is out there.
It is out there. It is. I appreciate that. My practice is VIM medicine, so VIM medicine. VIM stands for Vitality and Motion. So, movement being core to a lot of what I work on with my clients. I say it is concierge in nature, but just because you have my phone number does not make you healthy. The clients who I work with know that they have to work, right? It is about work. And unfortunately, you can't outsource your health to me. You can't automate it to Conor. That's just the way that it works. You got to put in the work. And so for me, it's about working with a select number of people who really want to get after it and go deep. And so, I appreciate the opportunity to sort of talk to anyone about what I do. And, obviously appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak with you.
We're so glad this has been great. Thank you very, very
Happy to
much.
come back. Appreciate the invite.
Dr. Rich Joseph, thank you very much. When we come back, we're going to talk to somebody who is trying to develop a community of individuals who have some like values and who are working toward wellness and health. So that's coming up next right here on Carrigan and Company. It's the most wonderful time of the year. You want to know why? Because it's Lucia Lighting and Design's annual Red Tag Sale. Head to Lucia Lighting and Design at 311 Western Avenue in Lynn before the end of January for the best deals of the year. Lucia has hundreds of items with red sale tags on them, and that means 50% off. These are one-of-a-kind display pieces that you won't want to miss. Don't wait. Get to Lucia Lighting and Design before the end of January for their annual Red Tag Sale. Learn more about my favorite lighting design store at lucialighting.com.
If you like rum, you're going to love Rumson's Rum, New England's most award-winning rum brand. Rumson creates distinctive and savory flavor profiles by hand-selecting and marrying the finest barrel-aged Caribbean rums. The spirits are then blended and finished in the New England Rum House. Choose from Rumson's Gold, Spiced, Grand Reserve, or Coffee Rum, which is smooth and sweet with a warm roasted coffee flavor, a hint of vanilla, and a decadent buttery finish. Find Rumson's at liquor stores or ask for it at your favorite restaurant. Learn more at rumsons.com. That's rumsons.com. Rumsons. Life lived, life enjoyed.
Welcome back, everybody, to Carrigan and Company. Keeping me company today, Conor Murphy. He is a fitness expert. It's been great to have you here. I'm so glad. This is Conor's second visit with me, which is so cool. Last time you were a guest, today you're the co-host.
I know, it was quick last time too, so I'm glad to get a little bit more time with you today.
And you and I have yet some conversation to be had, and we'll do that a little bit later. But we want to welcome our next guest who is with us. And I'm really excited about this because I want to hear a lot more about it. Pat Dooling is the owner of Dray. Actually, two locations, one in the South End and one in Cambridge. And before I even get into it, Pat, first off, great to see you.
Yeah,
Happy New Year.
nice to meet
Thanks
both
for
of you. It's
being
very,
here.
this is a great topic to be addressing in mid-January.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And as I was saying to you off the air, sort of the backdrop of this is people have fallen off the wagon, if you will, not just alcohol, but just, kind of those resolutions that they've set for 2025. But they don't necessarily have to be about January. They're about a full year. And in the case of Dray, you guys are really sort of supporting the idea of a lifestyle and a community. But let's talk about what Dray is first.
Yeah, sure. So Dray, a business I founded about 2 years ago, we are a non-alcoholic retail concept. So we call ourselves a non-alcoholic bottle shop. So basically, if you walked into our store, it would look a lot like a regular liquor store. Beers, wines, spirits, cocktails, except everything's non-alcoholic. So it has 0.5% or less or no alcohol at all. Provides great substitutes for kind of anything you want to replace or maybe try something different in place of an alcoholic drink you might normally consume. So sophisticated adult beverages, just non-alcoholic. Yeah.
And you said it was about a year ago that you actually opened
Yep.
that first location. Why then? Why here? Why now? Why?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it started with me personally. I quit drinking about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, which was a great personal choice. I had a great drinking career, so good I quit, and it was a really positive, impactful change for my life. And one of the things going through that I realized was there's a lot of elements that help support my change. Community, things like that, but also even the products, because you find yourselves in so many situations where alcohol is at the center of our social activities or, meals, what have you. And I just found these alternatives were amazing and kind of really hard to get. And people just didn't know about them. So I sort of founded the business on the premise that lots of people were like me, were choosing to drink less or not at all, and would like a tool like this, these sort of great, exciting new products that could help.
How do you feel about the idea that people want to replace alcohol with something that's similar to alcohol, but it's not? How do you feel about that?
I guess I have my own thoughts on it, where I was a person where I could go out and not drink for long periods of time. But I think other people that struggle in social areas, it was a challenge for them to go out and be social without that aspect of it. So I see the positive benefit it plays in other people, which makes me love it. I maybe have just been in that category where it's it's either O'Doul's or nothing for the last 20 years and that. So it's definitely something I'm really interested in, and I'm very grateful for because of the role and impact I have seen it play in my friends and family's lives.
Sure. So, Pat, the interesting thing is that, I'm not looking for a substitute for alcohol. I either don't drink or I drink in moderation, and so my situation is a little bit different. But I think a lot of people are looking for a substitute for the social aspect of it. But up to this point, Conor is so right. You had a No Duels or you had a club soda, and that's it. So what makes the products that you guys are carrying better than what we've talked about?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because it has been sort of the sea change that's occurred over the last, couple decades. So it's ramped up recently, but yes, O'Doul's is one of the originals, and I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I'm an Anheuser-Busch guy at heart, and it was, so that's sort of inbred in me is that the non-alcoholics actually are a thing. I knew of it really early on. Fast forward to now, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of great non-alcoholic beers, craft beers, you name it. They've all gotten really good. But there's also wines. There's even spirits that are non-alcoholic. So all this work has gone into sort of crafting alternatives for kind of anything now, and many of them are very, very good. So we've come a long way in the last 30 years or so.
Okay, so talk to me about that, like wine, for example.
Sure.
I am a wine drinker.
Yeah.
I think about non-alcoholic wine, and I immediately think, well, that's grape juice.
Sure. Yeah, which it was probably, even just a decade ago. So non-alcoholic wine today has sort of advanced to the point where they actually make the full alcoholic wine and they gently remove the alcohol from it. So these are real craftsmen, winemakers in Napa, Sonoma, Europe, who are taking great wines, great grapes, making what they would ordinarily make, and then using a really sophisticated process to take the alcohol out. So I always tell people when they think of non-alcoholic wine, it is real wine. They've made that sort of change in the fundamental product. It just doesn't have the sort of negative part of it, which is the alcohol. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how do they do spirits?
Yeah, similar. Spirits is obviously the hardest. It's 40, 50% alcohol by volume. And so the toughest by far, but they're getting there. It's probably, a couple decades behind even wine. But things like gin, tequilas, rums, they are creating great distillates that have all those same flavors, the background flavors that you can cocktail into something. So it's not really at the sipping stage yet in terms of the spirits, but I think it's going to get there. That's what's really exciting to me is this is an industry with a ton of change and sort of interesting products on the horizon.
Let me ask you one more thing about the products. I find that a lot of times non-alcoholic products are very sugary.
Yeah.
Is there still a lot of sugar?
Yeah. So again, a common perception that was probably true, again, a couple decades ago, people often refer to the word mocktails. I will say, I hate the word mocktails because it sounds like you're mocking, the industry. I like to say non-alcoholic cocktails because they have advanced. But the old mocktail world was some sugary juices and sodas that a bartender might throw together because they had to try to create something non-alcoholic. These drinks are much more sophisticated and they're crafted with a ton of flavor, good quality ingredients. I mean, one of the things, I brought a bunch of stuff in. One of the things you'll notice is all of our stuff has full nutrition labeling on it because it's required to. Unlike alcohol, it's regulated differently. And so you can see exactly the calories, the sugar content, all the ingredients. And I think what that's done is given more transparency to like what's in these products. And it's made them more sort of rigorous in terms of what they use.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's really interesting in that because that'd be the first thing I would think of is, okay, that's a lot of sugar, and I know the impact of liquid processed and refined carbohydrates that people are processing at an unprecedented rate. However, I also think about it, and I'm like, I don't know the last time my friends all went out and had 14 non-alcoholic beers in that sense of it, yet demonizing that above alcohol.
Sure.
There's definitely an area where it's like, oh, there's probably a playing field that's going to be appropriate. And then also, as you said, with the advancement of it, I mean, there's not a restaurant that I've been to where you don't see some sort of menu that gives those options to people, which I do think is important. And it's one of those things where my thought process has changed in it, where it's like, hey, if you're not going to drink, just be mentally strong enough not to drink and go out and stand your ground on things.
Yeah.
But now understanding that not everyone else, having a little bit more empathy as a trainer and having mass amounts of people come through that not everyone thinks the same way. And if this is going to be the factor that can, if alcohol is destroying someone's life, then I think this is absolutely a safe way. And people stop drinking for many different reasons. But I've yet to see some massive downfall relative to what alcohol consumption does to anyone.
Sure. Well, I think you're exactly right about the social aspect is there are a lot of people that struggle with not having something in their hand. And I always tell people alcohol is the only sort of drug or substance out there that you have to explain to people why you're not consuming it. So maybe you've experienced this at a party. I certainly have plenty of times. I'm the guy with the Diet Coke. Everybody else has what looks like a cocktail. Why aren't you drinking? What are you doing?
Or you have a problem, which is why you're not.
Exactly. People assume all sorts of things. And so I do think this is that tool where it sort of says, you can be a part of the celebration, and it's got great flavor. It's got 90+% the same experience, just not the alcohol. Yeah.
So let's talk about that. You, your business model is not just selling these products, which, by the way, I've been on the website and it's really cool. Again, being a wine drinker, they have sparkling wines, they have rosés, they have, I mean, you name it, Pinot Noir, everything, which is really great. And I know that you brought a bottle here with you today. But you also are promoting a lifestyle, a community. So talk to us a little bit about that. That's part of the business model.
Yeah, I think the community side of it is, I think, critically important because as we spoke about, I think, off camera, I mean, there's this perception of everybody's drinking. Everybody's kind of drinking the same. The whole world's drinking. And a lot of people, when they make the decision to quit or reduce, it feels really isolating. I certainly know for me that was the original feeling was like, oh my God, like, I'm going to have to explain to everybody. I'm going to avoid gatherings because I know alcohol is going to be there, all that type of thing. And so what I found certainly through my own sobriety is like the group aspect, the community aspect is huge. Certainly in the recovery world, I mean, it is the central facet of like how people recover many times. And so my thought is, hey, let's bring that back out into the open. So, you don't have to be the person that decides to go to the dark church basement and go to meetings. You can experience that same group support, like even in just smaller choices around things like dry January or taking a break. And so we encourage that through lots of activities. We do cocktail classes, we do tastings, we do health and fitness classes, we've done yoga in the store. We try to sort of get these products what we call out into the wild. So how you would normally experience an event and have a drink at the end, we can sort of replicate that with a non-alcoholic drink.
And tell me about the reaction to them.
Yeah, it's been huge. I mean, I think we still have people who are finding us who are like, what the heck is this? Why, like I didn't even know. But it's built, month on month, year on year. And now, like in this Dry January, for example, I mean, we've had a couple cocktail classes, 50-person classes sold out like that. So I do think we're tapping into this desire to people want a social life without alcohol at the center of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and I'll say one thing with training that you find the same thing in is when you are willing to go through something challenging, when someone is stepping foot back into the gym, your odds of doing it for the long term are significantly greater if you are doing it in a community of people. And that's not to say, hey, if you're going to stop drinking alcohol, that's going to be shared suffering, because how I pitch my workout class is that it's not going to be easy. You will be uncomfortable relative to your physiological and psychological tolerances.
Sure.
But in the same way, if you can go to something where there's other people that are around and you're like, hey, we're doing this thing together for whatever reason. I have friends that have chosen sobriety. I have one friend who just never drank. He said, I saw people when I was really young that were drunk, and he's like, well, that's not what I want to do. I have friends who stopped doing it because we were going on a tour together, and they were like, well, I'm paying you to be my trainer on this tour. Let's not drink. It was 3 years ago, and they're like, my quality of life is just better. And then there's obviously some more extreme examples of that. But I think the community aspect is so important, and it really does relate to training or really doing anything. To that cheesy saying of, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go in a group. And you're like, yeah, it's cheesy, but shoot, it works.
It sure
and
does.
I bet everyone in here has some sort of area or community or family where that just really, really is highlighted.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So 2 stores now.
Two stores, yeah. We've got the South End, which is actually where I live, and it's my home community in Boston. I've lived there forever, and it's such a great local business community and a great food and beverage scene, which is really a part of this. The bartenders, the mixologists love this stuff and are getting into it. And then we recently opened in Central Square in Cambridge, another amazing community of, kind of food and beverage scene, eclectic population. So we'll see beyond that. I mean, we have 2 pretty successful stores and an online business, so we can ship anywhere. So if people are watching in New England, because it's not alcohol, we can ship across state lines and things like that. But yeah, we want to expand in different ways. I mean, it's for me, it's very mission driven around promoting these alternatives as, really a tool around health and wellness, and whatever way I can do that sort of across Massachusetts and New England, that's what we're looking for.
Sure, absolutely. Give us an idea of the price points.
Yeah, I mean, people often talk about, is it more expensive or not? And I would say the average is close to the same, maybe slightly more, but, a bottle of wine is in the 20s, something like that. I always tell people that we have a tighter band of pricing. So our wines, right, are 20s to maybe $30. We don't have an $8 bottle. We also don't have an $800 bottle.
Right,
and so much tighter band of pricing. And it's been coming down, honestly, over time as sort of the volumes grow in the industry. And it's similar kind of across the board. I mean, beers are the same price, that type of thing. The other big thing we do is we want people to try these things and sample these things. We know people don't know what it is.
Sure.
And so we sell everything we can by the individual, so you can come and make a mix pack of beers and get in at a price point that's comfortable for you.
That is so great. Okay, so very quickly, I want you to tell, first off, I'm from St. Louis as well.
Oh, fantastic. I had no idea.
So tell everybody the name Dray, where that comes
perfect.
from.
Look at that. So so Dray, people often think this is a slice of citrus as our logo. It's actually a half wagon wheel, because a dray is a traditional wagon used for transporting alcohol, like beer barrels. So the famous St. Louis Clydesdales, Anheuser-Busch Clydesdales, the wagon they're pulling is a dray. And we wanted to sort of take that word back and use it to mean being like on the wagon. So it's like, get on the wagon with Dray. It's just fun, vibrant branding, and, intended to sort of have this idea that it is a social thing. It is a community-based thing. Absolutely. Get on the wagon. And it also sounds like dry. So for something like Dry January, we can turn it into Dray January, and it works. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's really clever, and it's really great. I know you probably have a lot of events that are coming up, so people can look online.
Yeah, our website has everything posted as we release it. Lots of stuff pretty much every week, particularly in January. I would also say we promote stuff on social media. So if you're on any one of the social platforms, sometimes we're doing the last minute stuff, and you can see it there.
Sure.
And then beyond that, we do corporate events, we do private events. If you have an interest in having us out, or even just buying some extra product for a social gathering, we're happy to do that too. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
so glad
you.
you came in. It's really cool, and it is a great motivator. I think it's a great option for people. Even if you're into being like damp February,
Yes.
or other months of the year. This
Yeah,
is
I
a
always
great
say,
option
I
for
mean,
other
it doesn't
times.
have to be January.
No,
We're here
it
there
does not.
all year, any type of break. It doesn't have to be a month either. It could be a week. It could be a couple
Right.
days for some people.
You're right. It could be an event.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really terrific. All right. Thank you very much. And stay with us, everybody. We'll wrap things up on the other side of this break. This is Carrigan and Company. The holiday season may be behind us, but when you look in the mirror, do you still see some lasting effects? Well, I've got the answer. A hydrofacial at Sienna Aesthetics Medical Spa in Beverly. These relaxing, fabulous facials include deep cleansing, exfoliation, and hydration. You'll notice instant results. And my friends at Sienna are offering hydrofacial packages that include awesome savings and will put you on the path of radiant and hydrated skin. Schedule 2 facials and get the third half off. Start the new year with a fresh glow. That's siennaaesthetics.com. This segment of Carrigan and Company is brought to you by Sienna Aesthetics Medical Spa. Take years off your face with the very latest technologies at Sienna Aesthetics in Beverly. All right, it's that time when we wrap things up here on Carrigan and Company. We've had a great show. I've enjoyed every second of this.
Likewise.
I really have. I've loved being with you. I've learned a lot this morning, this morning. I guess this is, what time is it? It's any time. I forgot. On a podcast, it's any time. But I've learned a lot here today, and I can't wait to try the non-alcoholic wine.
I'm actually excited to try my bottle as well.
I know. We'll report back to one another to see how it is, okay?
Yes.
Yeah, because I kind of find at times, that non-alcoholic things, I'd rather just not drink anything for me, but I understand that idea of social for people, and so I hope it's good. So I'm looking forward to it. I think that each time we have a co-host, we ask them to participate in our Fast Five, which is 5 rapid fire questions that you answer within 30 seconds. Okay.
Okay.
And it's the College Hype Fast Five. College Hype, making a difference, one T-shirt at a time. Visit collegehype.com today. All right, are you ready, my friend?
I'm ready.
Are you a skier or a snowboarder?
Snowboarder.
How come? You just
Oh,
like
that's
it?
the clock. Oh my gosh. I was like, what's happening? I thought I was going crazy. I thought it was Captain Hook. I was in Peter Pan and I was looking around. Why? I grew up in board sports, so surfboard, longboard.
All right. How long have you been lifting weights, and what is your record amount of weight that you have bench pressed?
Bench press. The most I've ever bench pressed is 330 pounds.
Wow, great.
However, at the 2017 CrossFit Games, I performed a 317-pound clean and jerk, which is my heaviest lift. So that was from the ground to an overhead position. And since I was probably 10 years old working out with my dad and mom.
What's something that you hope that your daughter, Ty, never does?
Oh gosh, everything that I did. I hope she never loses her curiosity.
Yeah, that's great. What's your favorite cheap meal?
Pizza, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. And can you name a celebrity that you admire?
I feel like I admire a lot of them. I think one person that I would really like to work with and I admire is Post Malone. For the sense is that I don't think he minds or cares much about what people think about him. And he just has so much passion towards his craft. And I mean, granted, it's lovely. So a lot of people love him for it, but I don't think it's changed who he is.
Yeah.
And he may be pretty eccentric to some other people.
Yeah.
But I just love when I see someone who just stays in their lane of creativity. And especially at the show, how much that they thank the people saying, I wouldn't be here if you didn't like my stuff. So thank you for liking my stuff.
I love someone who is so talented that they can actually change their genre and do it effectively.
Yes.
I don't think a lot of people can do that, and he certainly has, and I think it's impressive as well, and he is great. I'm glad you chose him. That was really cool. We have been talking this entire time about people who set some goals for themselves on New Year's Day and maybe by now are already having some problems staying with them, but that it's not too late, that you can stay motivated, that you can live a healthy lifestyle that is going to have some bumps and it's going to have moments where you're going to fall off and you're going to get back on. It can be done, and you don't have to give up because maybe you had a tough week last week already. That's okay. So if you, Conor, could give people who are are listening and watching, just, one word of advice. What's something they can do right now that gets them back on track?
And this is really interesting listening to other people answer this and to hear kind of what Rich had to say about it, about continuing on. But I need to remind myself, and what I really remind a lot of my clients of, is that you are one meal and one workout away from going the exact direction that you want to go. And I think some people lose that in the, well, if I'm healthy this whole year, where will I be? And not understanding that it comes to a day by day, even an hour by hour choice, where if maybe for the meal, instead of eating something processed, eating real whole foods, shop at the perimeter of the grocery store and get outside and walk for 30 minutes, or get outside and do whatever form of exercise that you want to do. For the most part, it eliminates the root cause of our issues, which is overconsumption, primarily liquid processed and refined carbohydrates. So if one meal without processed carbohydrates and one workout, you are now going the exact direction you want to go. And you don't have to make that decision again until the next meal. Yeah. But it doesn't need to be this grandiose, hey, for 5 years, I'm going to make this plan. It's just one meal. And once you start stacking those, and now you have 5 meals and 5 workouts, and 10 and 10 and 20 and 20. By the time you look back, you're already months down the road. But just because you have a bad meal doesn't mean you can't take a step back to square one, which is you are one meal and one workout away from going in the exact direction you want to go.
That's the thing I think happens to so many people. They have one meal that kind of goes off the rails, or one day that they just didn't sleep well, or they were just too busy and they just couldn't get there. And then they think that's the beginning of the end. That's just a bad day.
Yeah, and the psyche of that too, if you do have that fall off, it's like a lot of times you're battling in your head, well, why did you have it? Oh, I've earned this. Oh, I've gone back and forth. Right. And now there's this mental battle, as opposed to just understanding that, whatever your religious beliefs are, but I believe that I was unfortunately born a sinner. So once I've accepted that fact, if I make a mistake, it's okay. Yep. Instead of having to make this excuse of, oh, why did I have that meal? Or why did I do this? Oh, because I'm a bad person. Oh, I'm never going to get better at this. It's, okay, back to square one.
Yep.
One meal, one workout. And that's the way I've taken things mentally, from a mental health standpoint, as well as the actions and behaviors that you want to do. You just have to start stacking them.
Yep.
And you can only do it one at a time. And if you let that one slip up be the reason that completely derails you, have a little bit of grace and realize I made a mistake. But if you go back, and again, it's just that one-on-one that's really helped me out over the last decade of my life.
Conor, how do people get in touch with you?
You can find me on social media. The company's social media is at Big Night Fitness. My personal social media is at Conor T. Murphy. That's CONORTMURPHY. And
one N, folks.
One
That's
N,
the thing that you have to keep
in
mind.
The right way, as my parents would say. But anyway, if there's something where you comment on the Carrigan and Company social media, email, anything, if you have any question or any feedback for me, I'm always open to it and always willing to help, because I wouldn't be where I am if people didn't care about what I had to say at some point and at some level. So very grateful, and we'd be happy to answer any questions, and super grateful that you even invited me to come back.
Well, listen, it's been terrific to have you. Thank you for being here. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Continued success, my friend. All right, and everybody, thank you for listening and watching today. This has been a great episode, I think, and I hope that you've learned something. And leave us some messages. We would love to hear your feedback about what you think about this episode. In the meantime, be sure that you follow us on social. And if you're listening, you can go back and watch this on YouTube. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody, for listening to Carrigan and Company. To find out who will keep me company and be my co-host on the next episode, be sure you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, X, and TikTok. Carrigan and Company is recorded at the Big Night Studios at the TD Garden in Boston. You can view the podcast on YouTube and listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure you tell a friend. The executive producer of Carrigan and Company is David Thompson. Our engineer is Peter Hurley, and our social media managers are Grace Carrigan, Colby Thompson, and Riley Thompson. See you next time.